Good morning, and you're very welcome to the launch of the Munster Vales strategic plan for the next 5 years. My name is Pat Slattery. I am chair of the board of the Munster Vales, and just a little bit about Munster Vales for those of you who may not be familiar. It's an umbrella destination brand. It's a cooperation between Limerick City and County, Tipperary County Council, Cork County Council and Waterford County Council. The area concerned takes in the upland areas of the Cummeraghs, the Knockmill Downs, the Galtee Mountains, Ballyhowers and the Nagels. So this morning we're hoping to launch the development plan for the next 5 years. We have a number of very exciting and interesting speakers to share presentations with you. We'd like to thank them for joining us this morning. And we'd like to thank you and welcome you for joining us. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Michelle Jackson from The Novel Traveller, and she will be our moderator for this morning. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you, Pat. Hello, everybody, and it's a great pleasure to be asked to moderate at the launch of this strategic development plan for the Munster Vales. I've travelled extensively over the last 8 years, writing for national newspapers and reporting for Virgin Media and News Talk. And I've discovered that it's the destinations that are often the most unique experiences. They're not always the most obvious ones. Most people think by visiting New York and Florida that they know America. But I've been around rural America, and I found that the best way to get to the core of the country is to visit the lesser known regions. So I've made a little video today to show you about the trip I took this summer. It was a remarkable family trip, taken in 3 generations into the Munster Vales, just to give you a taste of what I experienced. And yes, that was me on the zip line at Ballyhass Lakes, and it really was very exhilarating. The Munster Vales, you have a unique product, and at its centre are the people and the warmth they offer, giving an authentic Irish experience. So, and as a journalist, I would like to surmise that the Munster Vales offer highlights in each region. Tipperary being horse country, it offers lots of heritage with the Rock of Cashel, but it is also a really unique experience, and there's great opportunities there, I feel, for developing the equestrian experience. I had no idea how beautiful Limerick was until I stayed at the Ballyhowers Mountain Lodges, and this is where the landscape changed by the hour. It's truly stunning. Waterford was a real eye-opener for me. I'm half a Yellow Belly, half Wexford, and I discovered that Waterford has so much to offer with Dungarvan and Lismore Castle. And the River Blackwater eco-tours were probably one of the highlights of the trip. We're in a challenging new time for travel, but to be positive, the Chinese use the same word for disaster and opportunity. And this year, I saw it as a great opportunity to really get to know what the Munster Vales have to offer. It's a remarkable product, and I've read the plan, and the proposals are very exciting, as it looks like the domestic market will be important in 2021. My job today is to assist you and the stakeholders in harvesting the best tips and advice from our expert team of panellists to learn how to adjust to the new tourism strategy plan, and ask you all to focus on the supports the 3 bodies have to offer. So do send in questions for our panel to answer, as it's important for you to gain the most from today's events. Now, I'd like to introduce you to Triana O'Mahony, who is the Munster Vales Marketing Manager, and she launched the Munster Vales brand in 2017 and has driven the initiative since then. She's garnering support from tourism businesses, from communities and from stakeholders alike. She has built strong relationships with the businesses in different regions, and both nationally and internationally through Broad Fáilte. She has organised the PR that they have worked with over the years, and she will now give us an overview of the strategic plan and elaborate on what the future holds for the Munster Vales.
Thank you, Michelle. So thank you very much for joining us today for the virtual launch of our Strategic Tourism Development Plan. So firstly, I just want to thank by starting the people behind the creation of the strategy. So Mairead Winters, the steering group, the board of Munster Vales, James Chilton and the team at Future Analytics KPMG, all of the consultees, South Tipperary Development Company for the leader funding, and the 4 local authorities and local enterprise offices for their continued support. So this ongoing support has been fundamental in the success of Munster Vales to date, and we look forward to working together in implementing this plan over the next 5 years. The Munster Vales project has delivered an enormous amount in recent years, with a significant impact on tourism in the area. Not only is tourism in the Munster Vales worth €61 million to the Irish Exchequer pre-COVID, but our work and how we deliver has been nominated for Best Tourism Initiative Awards for 2 consecutive years. We have mentored, trained and supported over 200 businesses in the last 3 years, and we look forward to working together with those businesses, supporting them in these very challenging times for the years ahead. Leading travel writer Paul O'Conneilla has recognised the vision of Munster Vales in positioning our open spaces, a particularly crucial element of our strategy given the impact of the pandemic. Paul has said, "I've been fascinated to watch Munster Vales grow as a tourism brand in recent years. I think as we embark on post-pandemic staycations, that open spaces, outdoor activities, fresh air and off-radar discoveries will be top of mind for home holiday makers, and the region is clearly well positioned here." So our aim is to equip Munster Vales to be a self-sustained tourism hotspot by delivering on the following: a 5-year plan to support the development of new and existing tourism opportunities and position Munster Vales as a key tourism destination. Maximise partnerships between the 4 local authorities and Fáilte Ireland, providing opportunities for businesses joining up products and experiences. Harness collaborative investment and support, and importantly, support a sustainable rural economy based on low-impact activity tourism. So the strategy was informed by a series of strategic conversations with accommodation and activity providers, interviews with key stakeholders, local authorities and government agencies, and supported by an online survey. This delivered valuable information and insights relating to the perceived successes, challenges and future strategic priorities for Munster Vales. One of the ways we were able to plan ahead with foresight and vision was to benchmark against comparable destinations. We studied 4 similar tourism projects and examined how we could learn from their successes. Particularly relevant this week was the nearby Burren Eco-Tourism Network, which has just been named as one of the Lonely Planet's best community tourism winners for 2021. So we congratulate the Burren on this fantastic award, and we look forward to learning from their successes in the years to come. So there is no doubt that tourism has had a major economic impact, supporting over 7,000 jobs in our area, again in a pre-COVID climate. So the plan has taught us that an opportunity to assess the economic value of Munster Vales is crucial. This will help us to develop a clear picture of that impact so that we can make key decisions and plan for the future. So next year we're going to be working on assessing Munster Vales' exact economic value. So we already have the advantage of outdoor opportunities in place. There's never been a time when people have needed more what Munster Vales have to offer. Our vision is to promote, support and connect communities and rural tourism businesses, offering a wealth of heritage, outdoor and visitor experiences across 5 mountain ranges in Cork, Limerick, Tipperary and Waterford. So the strategic priorities. The strategic approach is supported by 3 strategic priorities that focus on growing the Munster Vales brand, supporting the development of existing and new visitor experiences, encouraging extended dwell time and increasing revenue growth from overseas visitors when it's safe to do so, and importantly now for the coming years is our domestic visitors. So number 1 is stakeholder and community engagement. Number 2 is Munster Vales visitor experience development. And lastly, visitor awareness, motivation and engagement. So we have worked hard together and with our stakeholders to harness and shape some excellent ideas for the future of Munster Vales, starting with a community engagement pilot programme, which we plan to launch in January 2021. We've commissioned Cillian Murphy, consultant, who's based in County Clare and is an expert in community tourism, to roll out this programme. So the programme will be open to all communities across the region, and it will ensure that communities have the support and toolkit to leverage off the Munster Vales brand and build on the collaborative opportunities between businesses, communities, counties and regions. So we'll also be working with the other regional brands, for example, Ballyhowrah, the Knockmeal Downs, Tipperary Tourism, Pure Cork, Visit Waterford, the team in Limerick and so forth. Then we're going to work on we are working on a specific digital strategy for 2021 in the context of COVID-19. So we're focusing on supporting tourism-related businesses and delivering tailored visitor experiences. We're planning a training needs analysis and working closely with the local enterprise offices, the ETBs and Ballyhowrah Development to identify any training gaps and provide specific training to businesses to help build their capacity. We identify gaps in our target market for specific trails throughout the region. So we're currently working with One Little Studio to develop a Munster Vales food, drinks, craft, garden and heritage trail. So this will link up all of these related businesses across the 4 counties and offer high quality experiences to the market, aligning with Ireland's Ancient East themes, and we'll be working with Fáilte Ireland to promote these. And lastly, we are creating experience routes across the Munster Vales. So we're planning on carrying out a number of feasibility studies in the next 5 years to develop Munster Vales experience routes. So we're essentially looking for creative ways to link the area by developing bespoke trails, connecting the scenic rural routes with the signature experiences. So this will then encourage visitors to travel more and stay longer and to go off the beaten track. So I'm very excited to tell you about our hero products which are under development. So these are designed to use our existing assets better to maximise tourism potential. So firstly, I'm going to talk to you about the Munster Vales Greenway. So the aim of the strategy is to link the central elements of tourism across the Munster Vales. So a key component of this is the geographical link-up of greenways to complete a full circle alongside the railway and around the perimeter of Munster Vales. So the Munster Vales Greenway has the potential to link the South East Greenway in Ireland's Ancient East to the Western Greenway in Wild Atlantic Way. So as we all know, cycling is rapidly growing in popularity, especially now in times of COVID-19, and it has the potential to make positive impacts on businesses along and near key cycle routes. So we're currently working with Waterford County Council and Tipperary County Council to commission a feasibility study to extend the Waterford Greenway an additional 20 kilometres from Kilmeaden in County Waterford to Carrick-on-Suir in County Tipperary, and this would provide a link with the Suir Blueway in Tipperary. So this amenity, developed on a phased basis, would maximise the recreational opportunity presented by the considerable public investment in similar initiatives. So a range of packages, experiences and transportation connections could then be developed along the route, which would link the Munster Vales as a destination and demonstrate inter-county partnership, as well as creating local employment, which is crucial and one of our main goals. So we're very excited to learn as well that Cork County Council and Waterford County Council are working together to develop a feasibility study to extend the route from Dungarvan to Mallow. So it's very exciting that they're working on this and we're working from the other side. So again, you can see the collaboration and we look forward to, in time to come, hopefully linking them all up. So the Munster Vales Way, so this route would incorporate the 4 counties, the mountain ranges, the valleys in between, with the advantage of combining stretches of 5 existing walking routes. So St. Declan's Way, which we'll learn about later in the presentation, the Avondhu Way, the Ballyhowrah Way, the East Munster Way and the Tipperary Heritage Way. So walking, hiking and cycling appeal to key target markets in the international and domestic audience, and they are ideally placed to showcase the spectacular scenery within this region. So with the objective of encouraging more overnight visits and identifying a collaborative initiative that can unite the mountain ranges that characterise Munster Vales, it is recommended that a feasibility study is commissioned to create a Munster Vales Way that links Carrick-on-Suir all the way down to Liscarroll, where the Ballyhowrah Way starts, and linking everything in between, all the small towns and villages and businesses who would all hopefully benefit from this walking route. So onto the Munster Vales Heritage Route. So although there are many scenic drives across the Munster Vales that you may be aware of, there is no one single route that is consistently signed that covers the entire area. So the development of a branded Munster Vales Heritage Tour would pull together all the best of the existing driving routes, allowing tourists to experience the entire Munster Vales in one go. There is additional potential for the development of multiple routes here, rather than just one defined route, and for this to be identified on an app rather than fixed signage. So we're very excited to get started on this Munster Vales Heritage route as well. So this map here details the impact of all 3 routes, and it shows you how they interlink across the 4 counties. So these products would have enormous impact and benefits to the communities, towns, villages and businesses along the route. They would include delivering economic benefits, providing a valuable amenity to regional communities, to people who live and work and visit there, and providing opportunities again for local employment. So we know this is going to be a slow burner. This isn't going to happen today or tomorrow, but we can't wait to get started and to progress this, again collaborating with the local authorities and the local development companies. And we hope that you, the stakeholders and the businesses, will get behind us and support us and give us your input as we continue to progress these projects. So just moving on quickly to our action plan. So the strategy's action plan is designed to deliver defined and measurable targets. So some of the actions include capacity building to enhance tourism's ability to adapt within a rapidly changing environment, as we have seen this year. 2, to deliver a marketing programme focusing on rural outdoor experiences. And 3, continue to work with Fáilte Ireland to create and promote online saleable experiences. So our strategy is very much in line with Paul O'Conneill's belief that collaboration is crucial for brand identity and sustainable tourism. So I think Paul sums it up well here, so I'll give him the last word. So the trick is distinguishing your area with a strong brand, message and selling point, avoiding confusion with other brands and whetting our appetites for Irish explorations. As with all tourism endeavours in Ireland, it is critical for businesses in a particular area to work together in attracting visitors. Collaboration is key in helping messages cut through in our busy lives. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Trina. That was very, very interesting, and I can't wait to go and sample some of those again next summer. So it gives me great pleasure now to introduce Elena Fitzgerald-King, who is the Irish Hotels Federation President and has been since February 2020, so that definitely has met with some challenges. But there's no better woman. She's a second-generation expert hotelier at the Fitzgerald's Woodlands Hotel, Adair, where she has been director for 16 years. She's responsible for strategic growth of the hotel and team and for stimulating and managing the continuous innovation of their products and services. She's a proud tourism ambassador and she is passionate about tourism jobs and tourism being at the heart of government. So if we can just go straight to Elena now, please.
Many thanks, Trina, and to everybody. I'm absolutely delighted to be here with you today, speaking to all of the stakeholders in terms of Munster Vales in what is undoubtedly probably the most challenging time that we have had in our industry. And I suppose maybe just to kind of take you back in terms of, I suppose, my own journey. Today is very much giving you a sense of, I suppose, the impact that it has had on our own hotel, Fitzgerald's Woodlands House Hotel and Spa, located in the beautiful splendour of Adair, our very own Vale in County Limerick. And equally in terms of, I suppose, my new role, or mightn't seem so new now, in terms of my presidency of the Irish Hotels Federation, and indeed my membership of other organisations that are enabling government, I suppose, to try and pivot tourism as best as possible in terms of recovery. So I believe I have 15 minutes, so let's get going in full gusto. So maybe just to kind of take you back, at the end of February, I was absolutely thrilled to have been selected as president of the Irish Hotels Federation. A huge honour for myself personally, indeed for my family. My mother Mary was the first female president of the Irish Hotels Federation 20 years ago. And I suppose I've always been actively involved in the Irish Hotels Federation. So it was a huge honour for us. And literally on that very first day when we left our AGM in Galway was our very first COVID stakeholders meeting. And kind of, I suppose, a sense of, look, there had been a lot of talk about it, but obviously not on our shores. And that sense of it was kind of a problem that was somewhere else, and never did we realise, I suppose, the scope of what was going to unfold in Ireland and the horrific consequences that it has had for our nations as part of that. So coming down from the high of Galway, and I suppose that very grounding first stakeholders meeting, inevitably that weekend, which was the last weekend in February, which traditionally would have been our leap year weekend, was kind of a little bit of a strange weekend, kind of the congratulations, the sense of celebration, but yet the rumblings of what was happening. And over the course of the next 2 weeks, hoteliers across the country witnessed, I suppose, a tsunami of cancellations of bookings, people getting uneasy about what was happening. International hotels, hotels that were based in urban areas, corporate hotels, they would have seen the impact of it first, whereas more regional hoteliers like our own, very much in the occasion zone, wouldn't have probably seen the impact of it so significantly at those early stages. But certainly when it came to that magic weekend, you know, as we led into Friday the 13th of March, and particularly on Thursday the 12th of March, when there was a cap of 100 people put on gatherings, well, that was a real game changer. And it was kind of a very, very unusual weekend. And I remember doing a radio interview, being part of a panel in RT Studios in Dublin on that Saturday. And as I drove home on a very sunny day, kind of surreal sort of day, very quiet road, I remember thinking to myself, you know what, we'd be so much better off if we were forced by government to close, because we were trying to limp along. It was a sense of responsibility to our team. It was a sense of responsibility to our guests. It was a sense that we couldn't let our guests down, particularly those who had occasions such as weddings, you know, planned for years. And how would we manage it, you know, in terms of, I suppose, the responsibilities that we felt in terms of fulfilling things, but equally doing it safely. And I rang my brother David on the way down, and we had the discussion. And the reality was, I suppose, it very much preempted us as I drove down along to say, right, the best decision for us is to close, but with a view to opening at weekends. And I suppose there was a real sense that, look, this is going to be a short-term thing, you know, maybe this might be something that we'll be forced to do until the end of the month at most, but certainly no one ever envisaged where it was going to go. So on that fateful, I suppose, Monday, we closed our door, but it was a frantically busy weekend. And even I remember, you know, I suppose the Trojan effort that was put in, particularly by government at the time, in terms of putting together, you know, a support structure for the great people that work in our industry, because that was our number one fear, that what supports were needed from a government perspective would be put in place quickly, they would be easily available. And we saw some, I suppose, great movement around that. And yes, the system wasn't perfect, but with any system that's put in quickly, it did provide a starting point. And then we reached a point where I suppose we were more or less in a lockdown situation. I suppose a big salute to those who continue to provide essential services during that period of time. What happened was, you know, 9 out of every 10 hotels across the country closed, including our own. And, you know, the impact of that was huge. But, you know, the sun shone, there was a novelty to it, as distressing as it was. We were able to have moratoriums around loans in terms of interest, in terms of capital. And we were very much kind of in a bubble. And we were looking to overseas in terms of seeing how it was panning out, and kind of a sense of a weird sense of comfort in terms of where we were at. So the weeks inevitably turned into months. At the beginning of May, we got a sense of, well, look, we might be opened on the 20th of July as hotels and guest houses. Restaurants had the opportunity to potentially open to the 29th of June, and the 5 phases. But there was a real sense of, well, look, it was going to be August, you know, or the end of August, when it was going to be the end of phase 5. And that expectation that by the time we came into September and kids came back to school, that there would be kind of, I suppose, a new normal or some sense of normality. And look, how far removed are we from that right now? So I suppose that kind of sense of, oh my God, the 20th of July, couldn't believe it, you know, 3 weeks into what would be the traditional kind of summer season in terms of school holidays. And I suppose the need for supports and the begging and, you know, the advocating and the tremendous energy that was put in by individual members of our industry, by, I suppose, my own federation. And when I say my own, my colleagues that I work with in terms of in central office. And they all too were working remotely and, like ourselves, dealing with the challenges of homeschooling and, you know, all of the mental financial, emotional challenges that came with it. So certainly was a very, very trying time. And then trying to make all the resources that you could available in terms of supporting essential services. But there was a real sense of we are in it together. And I think hotels and guest houses played their part very, very well in that. And then came the tremendous news that we were going to be in a position to reopen a little bit earlier than planned. Now, we were very lucky in Adair. The Midwest Response Group came together and put together a suite of training up to level 5 in terms of infectious diseases and control. So I felt that our region in terms of Limerick, Clare and Tipperary probably had a great confidence in terms of reopening. We were equipped with a fantastic level of knowledge and certification around it. There was various initiatives like the Fáilte Ireland COVID-19 Safety Charter, that sense of make a break for it. So there was a great sense of momentum in terms of getting ready for what was now going to be a 3-week longer trading period than what we expected. We'd obviously uncertainty around government, but in fairness to the government that was continuing to be in place until the new government was formed, whilst there was a lot of anxiety, there was a sense that we were moving in the right direction. But with that announcement of opening 3 weeks earlier came the dilemma of, oh my gosh, we've no business on the books, in terms of people who'd cancelled weddings, in terms of holidays, whatever. And I suppose that was a very, very frenetic time in terms of getting ready, guidelines. We were very lucky to collaborate with Fáilte Ireland, getting the seal of approval from the HSA, the HSE, the HPSC, LEAF and so many other organisations in terms of getting hotels and guest houses to, a safe position in terms of safeguarding public health and the public health of our teams and indeed our guests. And we all had a role to play in that. So we opened we opened it the very first day. Some other properties didn't open till later because they probably didn't have the level of sales built up or not kind of having a sense of how was it going to look and that. In the interim, I suppose there was a series of supports put in place, and maybe if we fast forward a little bit to the July stimulus, a greater commitment around the wage subsidy scheme. Now, that was probably the greatest game changer that we saw in terms of government supports, maintaining that link between, the hotel, I don't like the word employer, but that whole sense of with your teams. And it certainly was something very novel and very new, and great credit to all. And yes, it wasn't, again, a perfect scheme, but certainly, the first version of it and the iterations that followed continued to help us to maintain that employment, because we have to remember that tourism, prior to COVID, supported 270,000 jobs in Ireland. It was 1 in 10 of all jobs. In fact, it was 11% of all jobs. But critically, 70% of those jobs were outside of Dublin. So a huge regional and societal impact in terms of, being the hubs or the centre of so many communities in terms of enabling things to happen on the ground. And indeed, you've so many communities that are completely dependent on tourism. And if I reflect on my own village here in Adair, we are substantially dependent on tourism. And what really, really brought it to light was probably when we did voluntarily close, as did the 2 other hotels in our village. And so went 850 jobs that were directly in those hotels, albeit temporarily. But equally, very soon after, we saw a lot of the local retail outlets closing. So tourism as an ecosystem is very interconnected across a lot of others. When I reflect again on the July stimulus, it didn't give everything that we needed. There was also a huge challenge around, the TWSS was becoming the EWSS. What was that going to look like? It became evident over the course of, I suppose, a few days that the level of subsidy was going to drop. And when you think about that level of subsidy dropping in September, it was around the same time that traditionally our market would dip. And often, I suppose, when we think of, what kind of trade goes on in September, it was generally, I suppose, maybe the more senior market. Now there was very mixed messaging around whether people should do that. When we reflect on the 9 billion that tourism would have generated annually over the last few years, 7 billion of that came over from overseas. Then you were left with 2 billion in the context of, the potential full Irish market. And then we were left, obviously, with 120 odd days of lockdown. We were left with a very restricted version of what that was going to look like. And I suppose, as we'd gone through the summer, we didn't advance to the level or degree that we'd hoped. A lot of kind of pauses. And those pauses felt like we were regressing in so many ways. So trade didn't, quite pick up in the way that it was envisaged. And whilst Irish people were fantastic to don the green jersey, Yes, there were some areas like coastal areas that probably performed, very, very well. The urban areas like Dublin or indeed Limerick City on my doorstep performed at a really, really low level and not a sustainable level. And indeed, when we look back at our occupancy surveys, 1 in every 2 rooms throughout Ireland were not full in what should have been our peak period. So go forward again, we had a series of changes, lots of uncertainty, changing guidelines. I suppose we entered very much kind of a reactive zone in terms of announcements being made, not really having the degree of opportunity to get involved in them as well. And we found ourselves maybe a little bit in the reactive zone. Intensive lobbying ensued through our members, very much gearing ourselves towards trying to ease restrictions, but doing it safely. Not that public health had to be compromised, but trying to get it safe and trying to get it sustainable. And in September, as we saw more lockdowns, albeit on a regional level, and they continued into October, a lot of challenges around that. In the budget, whilst it didn't deliver everything we wanted, there are still some outstanding budgetary issues arising from it, and we continue to work from that. So where are we right now? We're in a very decimated industry. We're on life support. We're trying to be in survival zone. But we know that when it comes to recovery, we've a huge opportunity going forward. After the last recession, tourism was the #1 creator of jobs. 90,000 new jobs were created. And again, when you consider that whole regional impact, we have a huge role to play in terms of rebuilding Ireland. And what we've been doing is working, as closely as we can with government at all levels of government, because everybody has a role to play in terms of, I suppose, trying to enable survival mode, trying to reposition ourselves so that we have the building blocks for doing what we need to do in terms of recovery. And we're a very, very resilient industry. We've shown that already. So again, the budget did deliver, not to the level that we wanted. We are now waiting for the National Economic Plan, which is going to set out what's going to happen over the course of the next few years of government. Government are very committed. I have been lucky enough to be on the Tourism Recovery Task Force, very much kind of looking at all aspects of tourism. What do we need to get to in terms of recovery up to 2023? And, what key areas or pillars need to be put in place to achieve that? It's critical at this stage that an independently chaired oversight group is put in place to support what's going to happen there. I suppose we're in a zone now where we're all focused on December the 2nd in terms of reopening. What's it going to look like? We're not focusing on defining levels. We found that, I suppose, the plan for living with COVID-19 has been very challenged from the beginning with almost plus and minus versions. Our version is that we feel the county restrictions need to be lifted. People are going to naturally traverse across the country. And indeed, indoor gatherings in terms of, not gatherings, but indoor dining needs to be allowed as well. If we don't put that in place, what's going to happen is people are going to go to, the uncontrolled settings that are homes. And it's like we're forcing the problem into a home situation. We've already seen from HPSC cluster incidences that it's over 70% in the context of homes. In the context of hotels, it's 0.14%, which really, I suppose, shows our track record in terms of being controlled environment. Look at sanitation, social distancing, the whole processes around wearing masks, etc. We've come a long way, and I am, I suppose, full of the same enthusiasm and zest. Before COVID ever hit, I had 10 points that I want to achieve. And I'm working on 9 of them, albeit in a very different way to what I would have ever imagined. But it's the power of community that has brought us to this point. I'm very, very blessed in the context of the Irish Hotels Federation that we have a number of working groups. Our council, our management team, and indeed our executive team are all there every step of the way. And we've covered extraordinary ground, with the help of our members in terms of lobbying and media. We continue to do that. On the home front, I'm very, very blessed with a great team here, not as many at work currently as what I would like. It's critical to us because I know our place in terms of their livelihoods and our links with community, and we do try to foster it. It's a time for great creativity. We can't let this close in on us. We have to be forward thinking. We have to be thinking about the next big thing. And I suppose our thinking has now become short term, medium term, but we certainly can't lose sight of what the long term approach is. There are great advances being made when we look at China. There's a level of near normality there, albeit a year on. And so that sense of comfort in that. there's also the sense of comfort in the 2 vaccines that have been put in place, and indeed the commitment that's been shown by government and the Irish people. So look, that gives you a sense of my own journey as an independent hotelier in terms of the Irish Hotels Federation, and in terms of the journey with government, with the media. And our ultimate goal is to get ourselves into the most sustainable position that we can be, and to bring as many people along the journey as we can. So I thank you for your attention today, and I'm really looking forward to joining in the panel discussion later. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Elena. That was very interesting. And can I remind you all to send in your questions for Elena for the panel discussion later. It's with great pleasure now I introduce Brian O'Flynn, who is the head of Ireland's Ancient East since March 2020. And he brings with him an extensive experience of business development in the USA and Australia. He was a development manager in Melbourne, and he has extensively been in the Boston area. So could we please tune into Brian now, please?
Hi, Michelle. Thanks very much for that introduction. Look, today I'd hope just to take this time to cover off a few things, might look at a couple of key insights that we're tracking over time as the crisis has evolved. Also touch on a few of the support platforms that we have available for industry to tap into, and very much encourage you all to do so. And then at the end, maybe just cover off a bit as to broader outlook and how we're planning for the recovery, both internally in Fáilte Ireland and also with our various stakeholders. So Elena covered a lot of this already, but I suppose it is worth saying, look, the impact that the COVID crisis has had on the tourism industry is devastating and very disproportionate to what it has had on other sectors. Just to put that in, I suppose, bold figures, what we expect spending by tourists to be this year by the end of 2020 is in the region of about 1.7 billion. Now, that's at 21% of pre-coronavirus levels. So you take out 80% of any industry, and obviously the knock-on effect is massive. The unemployment levels, depending on who you listen to or on what survey you go by, anywhere in and around the 190,000 mark. So again, hugely significant, because as Elena said, it's an industry that employs directly 270. So again, huge impact there. In the context of the Munster Vales counties, so historically, or in 2018, 2019, Munster Vales counties welcome in the region of about 9.6 million overseas tourists. So that's about 29%, give or take, of the overseas tourist visits. Now, they spend about 20% of the overseas revenue. So in and around €1 billion is spent alone in the 4 counties on an annual basis by the overseas traveller. In comparison, the Irish residents spend around 450 million in the same area. So again, you take away 2/3 of the spend, and we're starting from a really tough starting point. So look, I don't want to focus too much on the negative, but again, I think it's important just to put it in bold figures where we stand. So what do we do, or what's the outlook going forward, I suppose, is the thing. So this year we were left with domestic. We were caught a little bit on the hop. Obviously, it happened. Nobody could have predicted what happened back in March. So it's important to track, from our perspective, the consumer sentiment over time. So there's 2 major things I want to, I suppose, draw your attention to firstly. And one is the mood of the nation. So the confidence that people have in their safety while traveling is constantly dropping. So we've been monitoring this sentiment since the very start of June, and it's continuously dropping. People feel less and less safe over time. Also, and this is contrary to what some of the narrative in the media might be, that people are dropping their guard, people are more and more concerned about social distancing requirements over time. So safety is absolute paramount when people are putting their money where their mouth is. So if people are spending money on an experience or staying somewhere overnight, safety is by and large their primary concern. Another thing I want to draw your attention to from this survey and the latest results, which we only got last week, is the intent to travel. So people's intent to travel is far lower than it ever was. We tracked the people's intent to book a trip over the 6-month period since the start of this crisis as well. And only 18% of people are saying at the moment that they intend to book a trip over the next 6 months. Now, that's not to be confused with the fact that they won't book a trip. What that's actually telling us, and what we're seeing, is the booking window is that people are booking very much last minute. So that changes people's patterns. Historically, we would have seen around this time of the year people putting in place their plans for their annual holiday or their long break. But actually, that's going to be a lot closer to the bone this year because the uncertainty with restrictions as we move through them. That presents a real opportunity for businesses to take advantage of, seasonal St. Valentine's Day, midterm breaks, etc., and also to have promotions tailored accordingly to those periods so that you capture that last minute intent to book that it ends up in your business as opposed to somewhere else. Another thing we've been tracking over time is the tourism approval rating. So this is important in that it shows how the community at large, how Irish people feel about tourism. So Irish people rate and rank tourism as number 4 in the fourth most important economic sector to the Irish people. So that's behind only agriculture, healthcare and education. So it is seen as being critical to our economy. And back to Elena's point earlier, where 11% of people work directly in the sector, it's that knock-on effect for the example of local retailers closing that it has. And 40% of people show us that actually they believe that more businesses outside of tourism only opened this year because tourism activity picked up back again in July and August. So again, without dwelling on this too much, where does that put us against our competitive set? So in Ireland, 61% of people say they're positive and they're accepting of overseas travellers returning, and 64% of people say they're positive about domestic tourism. Now, if you look, and it's just one example, but if you look at what New Zealand are saying, New Zealand's economy is highly dependent on tourism, and only 35% of people in New Zealand, being the community, are okay with overseas travel returning. Now, that's a lot of numbers, but where that's very important is we depend on and need the community to give the visitor that warm welcome that we so deeply depend on in the industry. And in Ireland, people are still very positive about tourism, and people are positive about overseas tourists returning also. The caveat being most people, over 55% of people, are saying that actually the overseas tourists, they don't necessarily want to see them returning until another 7 months' time. Now, we don't know what's going to happen with uncertainty, with restrictions moving and so on and so forth. And obviously airline access is a huge piece. But there is that feeling out there in the broader community that they don't want to see overseas tourists return for up to 7 months' time. So you're talking about the back half of 2021. The next thing I want to just touch on briefly, because I think it's very important and use any occasion like this to draw people's attention to it, is the business supports that Fáilte Ireland have put in place and I suppose B, that we're involved in. Tomorrow there's a webinar with the revenue commissioners on the CRSS scheme. So I just want to highlight that to everybody, and I can send the link to anybody afterwards. Trina, I might send it across to you. But there's a lot still of uncertainty around what's included in the CRSS scheme, what businesses are in, what are out. Seasonal businesses, there's questions over what are the various thresholds you need to hit. So we've arranged a webinar at 11 a.m. tomorrow with revenue directly to try and clarify some of those queries. But again, any queries you have, keep filtering them into us, and we have an open line direct into revenue where we're trying to get as much clarity on that as possible. The second thing is and I know we'll have some people on the call here today who operate B&Bs. So there was a delay in that B&B scheme, but payments were released this week. So we're administering that scheme on behalf of the government as we have the database of registered B&Bs. So payments were released this week, and the scheme closes on the 30th of November. So for anyone who isn't aware of the Restart Plus scheme specifically for B&Bs, please make sure you get your application in before the 30th of November. The other thing I want to just highlight is, and again, it goes back to, it's not necessarily a business support, but it goes back to that consumer sentiment about people having safety as the very, very most primary concern when they travel. We have the COVID-19 Safety Charter. 3,700 businesses now nationally have signed up to it, including 770 in the 4 counties that make up the Munster Vales. So again, I'd encourage everybody to sign up to that charter, because people are really looking for that now as they travel. I suppose just broader, generally, just to touch on it quickly, we do have a business support hub, a COVID-19 specific business support hub on fáilteireland.ie. There are lots of really, really good supports there. And I say that because we've had feedback from major hotel groups and down to the smallest business to say that, look, they've been using some of the financial scenario planning templates. They've gotten great benefit out of knowing how to pivot their domestic or their marketing to a domestic audience, whereas before they might have been marketing to overseas predominantly and so on. So I would encourage everybody to go there as your first port of call, because there's a huge suite of supports there. Earlier, back in September, we also launched our new Discover Ireland website. And on the back of that, we quickly rolled out a new Ireland's Ancient East website. So I really want to encourage everybody to make sure that your Discover Ireland listing is up to date, because since September, since the Ireland's Ancient East website has launched, we've driven 11,000 direct referrals into businesses through the platform. So it really is very powerful, but it's essential for businesses to make sure that their listings are up to date. The other thing we've done, which you'll see if you go into the new Ireland Ancient East website, is we're really trying to soften the brand a bit. So I think historically we focused very much on the built heritage. Now we're trying to elevate the outdoors, the activities piece, and you'll see in there of things to do. You've got heritage, but you've also got sightseeing, you've got adventure sports, you've got walking and hiking, which plays very much into the role of the Munster Vales and the product that you have to offer. The make or break for a campaign was the specific above the line marketing campaign that we ran with last year. So it was quite a large investment on our behalf. And I think a lot of people here might be glad to hear, might have seen it at the time. One of the features as part of that campaign was a newspaper supplement insert. And within that second insert that was out on the weekend of the 12th and 13th of September, in all of the national newspapers, we actually called out the Munster Vales and the product offering that can be seen around it. So we are trying to constantly elevate that outdoor offering. It's also important to point out that underpinned by that above the line program, we did have a sales conversion program as well through a number of channel partners. That was only actually open and live for 4 weeks before we moved to level 3. So we took the decision obviously to pause it then. But in 4 weeks, we delivered 2 million in revenue and 40,000 bed nights in a short window through various booking partners, including Super Value Breaks and Expedia and a number of online platforms as well. But by and large, most of those came through the Super Value mini breaks. So just, I suppose, broader outdoors, Munster Vales is obviously an amazing outdoor offering, and that's something that we've seen, I suppose, a move to pre-COVID is the outdoor offering that Ireland and that other countries have, and how we compete as to what the product is. So I think you're very well placed in your timing for your new strategy. That's also something that we're looking at internally about how we resource things and how we look at things, and lifting the outdoors as a major focus of our work is something that we're looking at the moment. And one of the pieces of this was that a lot of people will be familiar with is the Bear Breffni Way, which passes through some of the Munster Vales. So there was RRDF funding that we secured back in June. So that was to carry out a technical and trail audit to develop what should be the signage to take people and interpret people through the journey of the Bear Breffni Way. So that's currently out to tender, but we expect to have somebody appointed in the coming weeks. Elena covered a lot of what I wanted to just chat on quickly on in terms of the government, I suppose, response. So I won't repeat some of what she said, but I think the task force, the national task force, which Elena sat on, did a really, really good job about elevating the concerns of our sector right to the top of government, and full credit goes to everybody that sat on that panel. I think that heavily influenced what came out of the budget. And look, the budget for 2021 is certainly a good budget for the tourism industry. One thing in specific which came out of that was a business continuity fund, which will be administered by Fáilte Ireland. So there's 55 million euro that's ring-fenced in purely for business continuity to keep businesses surviving over the off-season. Now, that'll be cut up into a number of schemes, but what we're waiting to see is what does the CRSS cover specifically, so that we make sure we're not covering the same needs twice and that nobody's left unserviced. So there is 55 million there, and look, that's very much a work in progress at the moment to see what schemes can be devised to make sure we keep as many people afloat as possible over the next 6 months. There's also another interesting piece which we asked for money on there as well, is in terms of the upweighting the digital capability of the industry. So actually, the online bookability of the Irish tourism industry is a lot further behind where our European and international counterparts are. So there's actually much less of our product is bookable online. So we've secured 5 million funding there to elevate that and to make sure we bring that percentage up so that we compete with the international market as it begins to reopen again. And then there's some good long-term measures in there as well, obviously, in terms of the VAT rate cut back to 9%, which helps us be more competitive as markets open. So look, I suppose briefly to sum up, where do we see consumer demand and what do we see the needs of products and experiences for 2021 in particular? Look, it's fair to say that domestic will be the main source, if not, or I won't say it's the only source, but it certainly will be the main source of revenue for the Irish tourism sector. So again, like back to the figures we talked about earlier, that is only a small segment of the revenue, but that is what we do have to play with in 2021. Now, what we also have in 2021 is the visitors that are the Irish consumer that would often go abroad for their break. We have the opportunity to capture them. So we did, a lot of businesses, as Elena mentioned, saw huge success in July and August in capturing that market. So it's important that we remind the visitor of the great time that they did have in July and August to capture them again into 2021. It's really important, though, I think that people understand the way we see this playing out, though, is that the longer breaks will be very much concentrated in July and August and will be quite family dominated. I think what we will be left playing with is in the spring and autumn, should things open up as we hope, we'll be left competing for the shorter breaks. People will be looking to take more short breaks in the spring and autumn period, and the families being the long breaks in the summer. But those short breaks will come at short booking windows. So I think be prepared to get breaks and be prepared to go out there and fight for those breaks that are short term, but you might only get the booking in a week in advance. Value for money is important, but health and hygiene is number one important. In terms of products and experience, just to wrap up briefly, people are seeking low touch, socially distanced experiences. Outdoor is key. So I think Munster Vales is never been as well placed. Outdoor is absolutely what people are looking for, and the online bookability and contactless payments with the low touch points is what people are looking for in terms of safety. So yeah, look, I'll wrap it up there, and looking forward to a question and answer session later on.
Thank you very much, Brian. I think I agree the Munster Vales is really well placed for the domestic market, and especially with all the outdoor activities, it'll fit in very well with the new direction for the Ireland's Ancient East as well. So please do send in your questions on Zoom for the panel later. And it gives me great pleasure now to introduce Kevin Curran, who is the head of the local enterprise office in Northwest Cork. He is the head of enterprise, and he works primarily with clients on start-up and early-stage enterprises. The office acts as a first-stop shop for businesses and entrepreneurs, and Kevin works with them to establish and grow their enterprises. Hello, Kevin. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, everybody, and I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
I can hear you well here.
Okay. Excellent, Abigail. I have a presentation here, which I'm just going to share now, and I'll kick on from there then. Oh, that looks as if it's working anyhow. Okay, so again, good morning. Kevin Curran is the name. I work with the local enterprise office covering Cork North and West, and it's great to be here today. Local enterprise offices, we're one here in Cork, we're one of a network of 31 across the country. We're an embedded part of the local authority system and have been up and running within the local authorities since 2014. In our previous incarnation, we were the city and county enterprise boards. The map there now that you're seeing, it shows the location around the place, but I always believe that we need to personalize things so that you can see who it is you're dealing with. And apologies, but what you're about to see, a colleague of mine said the last time she saw faces like that was on Garda crime call anyway. But that's me, and that's my three colleagues in the other three Leos in the region as well too. Pat, you may well laugh at your colleague Anthony there anyway, but look, again, I suppose it's about understanding who's there, but more importantly, there are real people behind those doors, and there are people ready, I suppose, to help with you. So a little bit about what we do, and I suppose I have deliberately cut down maybe to what I feel is maybe the most relevant for our audience here this morning. So the first thing I want to talk about is online trading and mentoring. And I suppose every one of us, and even just down to this event that we're on today, we've had to embrace the whole online service delivery. We've had to get over the fact that physical doors might be closed, but there have to be other ways of engaging with people. So I suppose our regular services are still here. It's just how we deliver them has kind of changed. And I suppose to say as well too that we work with a whole range of businesses, but pretty much all our offerings are suitable for any type of business, whether you're in tourism or hospitality, whether you're in manufacturing, whether you're in retail. There's something we do, I think, that you'll find interesting. And, the key thing is, don't be afraid, I suppose, to pick up the phone, or don't be afraid to get on the email, or don't be afraid to interact with us in some way or other anyway. Look, it's been a bumpy time recently, and I suppose this has probably been the area and the sector that we've had the highest demand from. Advice, mentoring, somebody, I suppose, maybe to, share the burden, somebody maybe who can, at the very least, understand and maybe talk you through an issue. And I suppose the key thing for any business is that they get the experience of an experienced business mentor, somebody who's walked that way before. And I mean, one thing I can promise you, and look, these have been unprecedented times over the last 8 or 9 months. But you know what? Business has had cycles before as well. And, if you ask for help, we will find somebody, or we will have somebody maybe who can, help you along that journey. Journeys don't tend to be that unique, and there will be somebody maybe who can help you along. So again, don't be shy about asking. Don't be shy about putting a hand up. And the other thing you talk about is some of the other online programs, and particularly training. There's an old saying that if you give somebody a fish, they'll eat for a day, but if you teach them how to fish, they can feed themselves for life. And that's a key element of what we do. Training, and I suppose like our other services, it has moved online using video and using tutorials. And look, I suppose if any of us had sense last February, we'd have all bought shares in Zoom. We would all be millionaires now. We could all probably retire, but we've all gotten used to the fact that there are different ways of doing things. And the idea of how you get your maybe business online, the idea of using social media for business and how you use that to connect, and a whole lot of other things such as remote working. And do you know what? Tough and all as times might be at the moment, we still have quite a level of demand from people coming to us who still want to start their own business. And so we're still continuing to run our start your own business programs. That's heartening. And equally, some of our existing businesses who are looking at maybe doing new things, maybe looking at pivoting their business, maybe looking at trying something else. We've all heard of the many micro distilleries around the country who started making hand sanitizer. Fair play to them. We've heard of businesses, that I'm thinking one in particular was making school uniforms, who are now making scrubs for the HSE and also the NHS in the UK and other health authorities. So there's still plenty interest out there. But I suppose one message that I want to push in particular, and I was taken actually by one of Brian's comments there, that a lot less of our businesses and our hospitality businesses in Ireland are bookable online. And look, that's a key message, because look, at the end of the day, if you're not findable, if you're not searchable online, your physical door might be closed, but at the very least, can't you open a digital door to the world? And I fully appreciate that a lot of people in the audience today that are in hospitality businesses, which are unfortunately shut as we speak because of the ongoing pandemic. But again, something Brian talked about there, the way that, people are at home and people are maybe looking and maybe hoping for that day when things will open up. And maybe now is the time that people are searching. Maybe now is the time that people are scratching their heads saying, you know what, if we get a chance maybe in January, February or March when things kind of loosen up and open up, where might we go? Because do you know what? I'm sick of the sight of the house at this stage, and I want to do something else. But being searchable and being out there and being findable online is a key thing. So our trading online voucher scheme is a scheme that it's been up and running for several years, but we kind of repurposed and relaunched it this year to, I suppose, act as a kind of a bulwark against the whole COVID. So for our small micro businesses, it's worth up to €2,500 to get an e-commerce site up and running, to get your trading online. Like I said, that digital door to the world, if you want, anyway. And some businesses maybe that got online a few years ago are also coming back to saying, you know what, we need to refresh and we need to maybe do something new. So look, it's there, it's cold hard cash, it's real assistance that's there and available. And I suppose in one sense, why wouldn't you avail of it? Why wouldn't you try to, get your business there for the world to see? So I'm really pushing this, I suppose, at people today. Have a look at it, have a think about it. get yourself online, get that digital door open, and more importantly, be findable for those customers that are out there. And I've heard recently that the level of savings in the country has never been higher because people haven't been able to spend money on, a whole range of activities. I think when we do eventually get back up and running, and I'm an optimist by nature, but when we do eventually, I think there is going to be a hell of a lot of pent up demand. And a lot of our people have discovered the joys and the wonder of staycationing over the couple of summer months that we were able to get out there. So there are going to be people there. Just make sure you can be found. The last thing I want to talk about, I suppose, is a few challenges for 2021. And that's, you'll see coming up there, my little crystal ball shortly. And do you know what? Key challenges, I suppose, for us going forward, and I suppose key things that we are going to be doing in the new year. We're going to continue to be working with businesses as I suppose some bit of light comes at the end of the tunnel. And I suppose we're all hopeful at this stage. I suppose news about vaccines and all that is giving some little bit of hope to us all. A key challenge for all of us is going to be reconnecting with customers. And I say that from the point of view of the Leo, just as well as yourselves, and I suppose maybe maintaining or remaking those customer connections. There are going to be legacy issues, I suppose, hanging over. There are going to be inbuilt legacy issues in an awful lot of our businesses because, let's be honest, taking 6 or 9 months out of any business's life cycle is an issue. And I suppose I'm sorry to mention that word, but Brexit is going to mean some changes for us all coming down the road. So look, that's going to be a challenge regardless of what. But if I was to leave you with one message, and one message alone is, don't be shy, get in touch, make sure you ask for help, because there is help available. And whether it is talking with the likes of myself and my colleagues in the other local enterprise offices, whether it is reaching out to organisations such as the tourism bodies, such as Munster Vales, such as your local authorities, because all our local authorities now have tourism officers embedded within them, and they understand the importance and the value of tourism as an industry in their respective areas. But don't be shy about asking for help, because a problem shared is always a problem halved. And there will be somebody either within my direct office or somebody that I'm aware of that we can connect you with that can maybe start to try and solve that problem. So I mean, look, my message is, and I said it earlier, I am an optimist by nature, even though the world at the moment is trying to grind that out of me. But I'm still optimistic in terms of where this industry and indeed our country will be over the next year. But start by getting in touch, start by asking for help, not by, I suppose, staying inside in your own silo. So I'm going to leave it there. I am staying around for the Q&A session after, which I'm looking forward to. And look, I hope you'll enjoy that very whistle-stop tour in terms of what we in the local enterprise office do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I'm sure the stakeholders will find that very supportive and helpful. And we look forward to your questions later on the panel. Next, I'm going to introduce Conor Ryan, who is head of St Declan's Way Committee. And this is a new initiative. It's a pilgrimage walking route linking Cashel in County Tipperary and Ardmore in County Waterford. It follows the route that Declan took when he was going to Cashel to meet St Patrick in the 5th century. And in turn, it is the way that pilgrims have taken to visit St Declan's Monastery, Holywell and Grave in Ardmore over the last 1500 years. So we're going to take a listen now from what Conor has to say.
Hello to all the Munster Vales board members. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me this morning. My name is Conor Ryan and I'm the chairperson of the St Declan's Way Management Committee. We're a voluntary community group with representation from across South Tipperary and West Waterford. So I'm here this morning to talk to you about St Declan's Way and give an update on what it's all about. So St Declan's Way is associated with St Declan, who was a 5th century saint in early Christian Ireland, and we're told he was born at a place called Drumroo between Lismore and Cappoquin, and he was a member of the Daisha tribe, and he converted them to Christianity, and at that time the Daisha would have inhabited Waterford and South Tipperary. So Declan went on to found his monastery at Ardmore, and from Ardmore he journeyed northwards to Cashel. He visited St. Patrick and King Angus, the King of Munster, at that time, and he made several journeys back and forth, we're told. And this is all in the life of St. Declan, written a few centuries afterwards. So the route that's there today, St. Declan's Way, is what's been handed down through the centuries, through long tradition, and there are a lot of legends and folklore associated with St. Declan and with the route. And as with the background to the modern walking trail then is, it's back about 100 years when Canon Power, he was a well-known priest and local historian from West Watford. He wrote a detailed article where he talked about the route from Ardmore to Cashel and described it in great detail. And then in the 1990s, Ardmore Enterprise Cooperative picked up on that, and they developed the walking trail, the modern walking trail, St. Declan's Way, from Ardmore to Cashel. So that trail fell into disrepair a bit after a number of years, but there continued to be a lot of interest in the walk and a lot of inquiries about it, and people wanting to know where could they get maps of St. Declan's Way. And that's where our committee came in. It was formed back in 2015 on foot of all of this interest that was still there in St. Declan's Way. And unfortunately, the route had become overgrown and signage had deteriorated. So something needed to be done to meet that interest. And this is all linked in, I think, to the wider interest nationally and internationally in pilgrim walking. Everybody is familiar with the Camino in northern Spain and the huge numbers that walk that annually. It's up over 300,000 every year now, including a lot of Irish people. And of course, in this country, we are fortunate to have a lot of ancient pilgrim walking trails right around the country, and St. Declan's Way is one of those, and we recognise that it's the longest one certainly, and one of the principal ones as well. And it has tremendous potential in these modern times to be something that will attract people to South Tipperary and West Watford. And that's borne out by what's happened in recent years. There have been a number of organised walks along St. Declan's Way. Knockmaildown Active in South Tipperary have been the fore in organising those, and they've proven very popular and very successful. So just to describe the route itself, it will be waymarked in both directions when it's open, and it goes from Cashel to Ardmore, and we think most people will probably elect to walk it from north to south, although they could walk it in the opposite direction. But it starts in Cashel, down into Cahir, crosses the shore at Ardfinnan, and then over the Knockmaildown Mountains into Melleray, down into Lismore, on the Blackwater to Cappoquin, and then across West Watford, finishing in Ardmore. And I suppose there's a few things that sets St. Declan's Way apart and makes it attractive to walkers. One thing I'd point out is the variety of terrain that's there. At different stages, you're walking along two of the longest rivers in Munster, the Suir and the Blackwater, and they're very attractive sections of the route. The crossing of the Knockmaildown Mountains is really a beautiful part of the route, where you've got great views to the north and to the south, and lovely open mountain terrain in places. And as well as that, you've got a lot of nice, quiet farm roads and boreens and tracks and paths like that, which are very quiet. They're off-road, and then some of the sections then on the road are also very quiet roads as well, and a really spectacular ending then to the trail as you come in along the back of the beach in Ardmore and into Ardmore village, and out around the cliff walk. If you still have the energy in your legs, you can do the 4-kilometre cliff walk and finish at St. Declan's Holy Well, which is the finishing point of the trail. So a huge variety of terrain there, first of all, and a lot of history and heritage and points of interest along the route as well. Cashel and Ardmore, I suppose, are well known as visitor attractions. You also have Clare Castle, the Swiss Cottage, and Lismore Castle right on the route, and people can stop and take time to have a look at those. But a whole host of lesser known heritage sites as well, which are very attractive in their own way. I think we have over 50 heritage points of interest identified and mapped along the trail. Ladies Abbey, which is just south of Ardfinnan, is one. The trail goes right past the Liam Lynch Monument. You have, of course, Mount Melleray Abbey as well, which is a great stopping point on the trail. The Round Hill Motte outside Lismore, right on the River Blackwater. Kilmalash Church is another lovely ruined church right on the trail. St. David's Holy Well near Aglish, which is a lovely secluded spot. And one of my favourite parts of the trail is the River Lickey crossing, where you've got the old stepping stones there, plus the modern footbridge. But some great stories there associated with the stepping stones, where Declan is said to have raised one of his disciples from the dead after he drowned in the river. So that's another strong point of the route, that it connects so many heritage sites along the way. And I suppose looking at the deeper meaning behind it, I think there's a huge interest in pilgrim walking, in people taking time out to do walking trails like this to get away from the hustle and bustle of life. So we'll be very much linking it to the whole trend towards mindfulness and meditation and taking time out and connecting with history and heritage and nature. And that's very much how we'd be pitching St. Declan's Way into the future. We would estimate that, or recommend that, people will take probably about 6 days, 5 to 6 days to walk the entire trail from Cashel to Ardmore. So that works out nicely as a week-long break for people. And we are in the process of putting together a marketing plan. It's at draft stage at the moment, and we have, I think, engaged with some of the stakeholders on that already, and we'll be looking for further support from Munster Vales and from others as well into the future. So just to update you on where the works are at, it's been a long road. We're at this almost 6 years now. A lot of the work has been entirely voluntary in nature. We have a great committee of about 12 people who have put a huge amount of time and effort into this. And just recently, we awarded the contract for the signage and the map boards along the route. So that is now in train, and that is the last big piece of work that needs to be done. So we are aiming for an inspection by Sport Ireland Trails in February of next year, and that the trail will be fully opened and waymarked and navigable for everybody. They can self-navigate the whole way in the springtime of 2021. And I think it would be a great thing if we can get over the whole COVID situation and open up the country again and get people back out walking and on St. Declan's Way into next year. I'm sure there'll be loads of pent-up demand there. So for updates, people can check out the Facebook page. We will be feeding out information through that as we get closer to the final inspection, as the signage starts to go up. And just finally, I want to thank and acknowledge the support we've received. As I said, we have a great voluntary committee, but we have got great support from Water Leader Partnership, from South Tipperary Development Company, and also from the two local authorities, Waterford City and County Council, and from Tipperary County Council, and that is very much appreciated. So as I said, keep an eye on our Facebook page. We will be making a lot of noise about this when it is opened, and you'll hear all about it hopefully in the early part of next year. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Conor. Well, I can't wait to do St. Declan's Way. I was going to do the Camino next year, and I think St. Declan's Way is going to take place for me anyway. We're getting lots of great feedback on Twitter, and Trina, Brenda has a question for you. She's wondering where she can read the strategic development plan online.
Yep. So the plan is going to be available on our website, munstervales.com, as of this afternoon. And if anyone would like a hard copy, please get in touch either via social media or send me an email and I'll send you out a hard copy. We'd be delighted to share it around. Thanks.
Okay, that's super. Thank you, Trina. Now, hello, everybody again. Nice to see you, Kevin, Brian and Elena. I have a couple of questions here for you, and we're just starting with Brian. This question is from a stakeholder. Will Fáilte Ireland provide a grant scheme targeted at assisting mid-sized projects? That means giving grants up to 600,000. As they currently stand, they need to be either under 250 or over 2.5 million. So what are the plans in place for that?
Yeah, look, so I can't say categorically now. So, I mean, at the moment, there's no grant scheme. You're correct, or whoever asked that question is correct. There's nothing in that bracket. There is a small grant scheme for below 250, and then there's a larger scheme above 750. So, at the moment, there is no grant scheme in place. But just like everything else at the moment, our current grant schemes also need to be taken into consideration. So, we're actually looking at our corporate strategy at the moment, and that's something that's very much an active discussion. So, whatever grant schemes come out of this process over the next few weeks, it's the one thing's for sure, it has to be tailored to specific gaps and needs in the market. Sure. So whenever it comes out, we'll update you as soon as possible.
Thank you, and they can watch this space and probably tune in tomorrow to the CRSS, which will be helpful. Elena, I have a question for you, please. What plans, hello, how are you? What plans are in the tourism recovery document to assist small businesses in rural Ireland?
I suppose in the context of the TRT, first and foremost, I was delighted to be involved. It's kind of a tripartite approach in terms of government agencies and the wider tourism industry stakeholders. It was really a whole of tourism approach. So to be fair, it kind of set out broad themes in terms of, I suppose, liquidity supports, employment supports, re-establishing international access, strengthening marketing investment, strengthening investment in the product, promoting competitiveness and doing it in a sustainable way. Whilst it's there as an overarching document, and we have seen some evidence of how it's been introduced as part of the budget, and indeed, I suppose elements of it you could probably argue were incorporated in as part of the July stimulus. The mechanics of how it's going to work is going to work through the agencies. So it's not designed for, a small business, a medium business, a large business. It's designed for tourism as a whole. And it's really to kind of, I suppose, put tourism very much in the survival mode where we are now, and kind of, I suppose, laying the foundations for recovery. So the scope of this document is from now up to 2023. So it doesn't address very specific ways or means around grants. I suppose that's kind of more of, the remit of the agencies. And in fairness, we've seen things already, in terms of, liquidity, grants, etc., training supports, and so many things that the agencies have come on board on. So I don't know, maybe if Brian would be able to probably give a greater sense of it. But right now, I suppose we're waiting for an oversight group to be put in place. And I think that's where it's going to bring, the TRT to the next level.
Okay, so I suppose the situation is ever changing with the COVID situation anyway. So that's something we have to take note of. Thank you, Elena. I have a question now for Kevin, please. Hi, Kevin. So I have a listener here who's asking, how can Leo make it easier for small businesses to get through the paperwork involved in getting grants and assistance? I'm sure there are lots of people have this.
I think, to be fair, a lot of people just get zoned off if there's any sort of paperwork at all involved.
Absolutely.
No, I'm not being flippant about that, no, because to be honest, we try and make it as seamless as possible. And one of the things that we are very conscious of is that business owners are time poor, and that presenting somebody with a list of questions, half a mile long is never going to get anywhere. So I think anything we do, we're trying to strip it down as much as possible just to get the bare essentials of what we actually need. The flip side of it, though, and I will make zero apologies for it, we are dealing with public money, and you and I are all taxpayers, and I think
Absolutely.
we understand, that there has to be proper accountability for us. So we try and get that balance right between getting enough to make sure that we cover the essentials without going over the top as well too. But look, if anybody has a difficulty, I mean, certainly I and my colleagues will give time regularly to help a person work through what's there. And a lot of us now are using online tools so that you can sit down at home and on your tablet or on your laptop or whatever, actually apply for schemes or inquire for schemes. And it's designed to be, I suppose, a 24/7 shop window for us as well too. So apologies if people feel there is a little bit too much, but I guarantee you we've stripped back as much as we can.
Okay, thanks very much, Kevin. I have another question here for Brian. Could Fáilte Ireland support community groups and match maybe day-to-day funding over a 3-year time frame to meeting agreed key performance indicators? Is there a way of supporting community groups?
Yeah, so we actually work very hand in hand with a lot of community groups, and at the moment we're just finalising what is a community tourism toolkit. So it's essentially a Bible or a go-to document for the community tourism businesses, and specifically to be able to, how do they set up their structure, what are the governance concerns they should look out for, how do they plan their financial planning, what templates can we put in place to help them to do a lot of that work, because those businesses rely on volunteers. And quite often they may not have a broad ranging skill set, and they need to go to lots of different places for lots of different pieces of information. So that's something that's literally going to be launched in Q1 of 2021. So we're just putting the final touches to it at the moment, which should be a real practical help to those businesses which are really, really critically important to underpin our industry.
Okay, that's great. And I have another one for you, Brian, here. It's great to see Munster Vales as a grassroots project retain and encourage the community buy-in throughout the community engagement programme outlined in the strategy. It's essential not to lose sight of this, as now more than ever communities are more important in building rural tourism. The question Mairead Winters has is there a prospect of Fáilte Ireland championing Munster Vales as a rural outdoor tourism destination through collaborative marketing campaigns?
Yeah, look, absolutely. As I highlighted there in the example during the presentation, that we did indeed feature Munster Vales as part of the Make a Break for campaign. So look, there are always opportunities, absolutely. And I suppose one of our key aims this year going forward is to, once we have the detail on what our marketing plans are for 2021, that we will share with all community groups, local authorities and so on, etc., so that we can make sure people are plugging into that national exposure as best as possible.
Sure. Okay, thanks, Brian. And sorry, another one for you from Councillor Maureen McGrath. The growth of hiking in recent years has been substantial, and the Munster Vales has great potential in this regard. However, public facilities such as safe car parking are unfortunately not in place in all areas. So is the development of these areas the responsibility of each local authority? Do Munster Vales have any role in working towards improving the facilities? Or how does a councillor move forward with these facilities, improving the visitor experience? Would that question be maybe to Pat? Would you be able to help with that?
And thank you, Councillor McGrath, for the question. I know in relation to the area that she works very closely with down around the Knockmill Downs, we're meeting with Knockmill Down Active in the coming days to talk to them about their local issues. But it is a challenge for all of our activity. We've just developed a new loop outside Cashel, the High Kings Loop, which is becoming hugely popular, getting hundreds of people every day. It's taken us by surprise, but that surprise is then meeting the demands for car parking and on otherwise rural locations. So we're victims of our own success. So many of these routes that we have developed and are developing, we start by conceiving them as rural and as low density, but suddenly they become very popular, and we need to develop quickly the associated facilities, including car parking. And then, of course, safety is another challenge around those car parking. So you need proper lighting, you need proper monitoring, and so on. And the local authority does have an important role here, but we work closely with the development company and with the other agencies to try and fulfill those. And I have to recognise the leader companies that helped with the St. Declan's Way and with the loop walks and other activity like that. So I think for the local groups, the voluntary groups, I would suggest they need to reach out, as Kevin was suggesting, to the relevant agencies, whether it could be the local authority, but it could be also the local development company. So it's important to reach out to your local agencies, and you'll find that that kind of collaboration and cooperation is required between us all. Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, I just have another little question here from Killian Murphy. This is for Brian again. It's interesting to hear the consumer sentiment around the percentage of people who are happy to welcome overseas visitors. Killian would be interested in knowing whether there has been a similar question asked of the communities who depend on domestic tourism. So those that aren't really taking in international, I suppose.
Yeah, so look, the sentiment is very clearly fed back that we're people in the short term for domestic tourism are far more positive. So I think it was a rating of 61% of people were in favour of overseas travel, but again, not for 7 months, but 64% of people are in favour of domestic travel now. So there is much less of a nervousness with domestic tourism, but in the short term window of 2 to 3 months, there's about 25% of people still a little bit less comfortable with domestic travel coming into their area than they were historically. So it is one to watch, because we need to balance and have the community as part of the overall offering, because if there's a sense of people not being welcome, obviously the overall experience falls apart.
Brian. And we've just had a tweet in from Paula Congale actually saying that it's great to see Munster Vales planning for the next normal, and it can start soon, with community and sustainability at the heart of future tourism. And I think definitely Munster Vales is planning for all that, and I think the future is looking quite bright. So I'd like to thank the panellists today for great information and for just such an interesting event. And I'd like to thank Trina as well for all the hard work she puts in all the time at Munster Vales, and to Pat as well. Thank you very much. And I hope you've enjoyed the event. I'd like to pass over to Pat
just to
now.
say a few words, and thank you, Michelle, just to say a few words before we close, to thank all our speakers, to thank Elaine, to thank Brian, Kevin and Connor, to thank Michelle, our moderator, thank you very much. And to thank Trina for help and putting this together this morning. And to thank you for joining us. And please follow up with any queries that you may have. The document will be on the website from this afternoon. I would also point out and remind you that the collaboration and cooperation that all of our speakers mentioned is so important, particularly in these difficult times. And while we're looking at a document now that looks ahead for 5 years, I think we are conscious that we're in the most difficult time. And at the moment, it's getting through that. And we're here to help as much as possible to get through that and to plan for a more successful future. So just to wish you all well, and thank you for joining us. We're going to finish up now with a short video of all the experiences and a summary of the experiences that are within the Munster Vales area. And thank you.